Imagine this simple scenario. You are standing in, let's say, the departure lounge of a busy airport, watching people stream past. You spot one traveler, maybe they're wearing worn out sneakers, perhaps a slightly stretched, maybe decade-old jacket, carrying a pretty nondescript canvas bag. They kind of look like they're trying to stretch their budget as far as possible, right? Now, here is the immediate twist. That person. They might be the owner of multiple successful tech patents, hold a vast diversified portfolio, and could, charter a private jet to their preferred private island without even blinking. The real money, the serious generational wealth, well, it often doesn't look like money at all. So why? Why did they choose to operate this way? Because they figured out that in today's hyper-connected, high-risk world, there is a vastly superior return on investment in privacy and discretion than there is in, well, public flexing. They've basically embraced financial invisibility as a core strategic advantage. Today, we are taking a deep dive into this powerful strategy known as stealth wealth. And look, this isn't just a discussion about avoiding logos. It's a really detailed exploration of high-level financial strategy, deep-seated behavioral psychology, and, frankly, aggressive risk mitigation. Our mission: to decode precisely why this calculated financial approach works, how the world's most successful people execute it, and, maybe most importantly, which parts of this mindset are immediately actionable for your own personal wealth journey.
And that separation, between the actual strategy and just the aesthetics, that's absolutely central to this deep dive. When we simplify and define stealth wealth, kind of using the Feynman technique here to break it down, it is, simply put, a calculated decision by high net worth individuals to create financial opacity. They prioritize things like durability, low public visibility, and absolute privacy, and they actively reject that impulse for conspicuous consumption. What really stands out in the source material we looked at is that this is far from just a preference for being modest. Not at all. It's a systemized strategy. It drives quantifiable benefits. It's motivated by the psychology of managing expectations, enhancing personal safety, maximizing negotiation leverage, and, at the highest levels of capital, navigating sophisticated tax structures and complex estate planning without drawing unwanted external attention.
Okay, before we jump into those motivations, let's maybe unpack the terms first, because honestly, they are constantly getting conflated in public discussions. We need to be crystal clear on the analytical distinction between three very different concepts. First, we have stealth wealth. This is the core concept we're diving into today. It is a comprehensive strategy. It's a decision, an intentional choice to maintain financial opacity through actions designed to reduce risk and cut costs. It's really about control over information and resources.
Right.
Second, there's quiet luxury. Now, this is strictly the aesthetic. It describes that look of subtle quality think, unbranded cashmere, heritage brands, maybe like Loro Piana or Zegna, where the quality speaks for itself without relying on giant logos. It is often expensive, sure, and it's used by people practicing stealth wealth, definitely. But quiet luxury can also be used by people who are just purchasing a high-end look, maybe people who are deeply indebted. It's a style choice, not necessarily a financial strategy in itself. Right, got it. And finally, we have minimalism. This is more of a lifestyle philosophy, isn't it? Focused on owning fewer possessions to reduce mental and physical clutter, maybe increase utility. While minimalism can overlap with stealth wealth by reducing consumption, stealth wealth isn't strictly about the quantity of possessions. It's more about minimizing the signal those possessions send out to the world.
Exactly. A stealth wealth billionaire might own, say, 50 properties held on blind trusts, but their day-to-day life could look quite minimalist. So yeah, the distinction is vital. One is a philosophical choice about what you value, that's minimalism. One is a fashion trend about how you look, quite luxury. But stealth wealth, that's the intentional strategic system designed to protect and compound assets.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So let's dive into those strategic drivers then. Why do the super rich go to such lengths to, avoid the spotlight? Our sources identified five really overwhelmingly compelling reasons that seem to form the foundation of this whole strategy. The first one, maybe the most foundational pillar, is security and privacy. I mean, it's pretty logical. When you project high value, you become a target. And this isn't just theoretical, is it? The risks are immediate, especially digitally now.
Oh, absolutely. Flashy posts about new purchases, luxury travel, expensive jewelry, especially if you add geotags. You're essentially broadcasting a hit list to potential criminals. It's risky. And we're talking about more than just, petty theft. A high profile increases the risk of sophisticated scams, digital identity theft, and even physical targeting. In some high-risk areas, a reputation for visible wealth actually raises the existential threat of extortion or kidnapping for the individual or their family. It's serious stuff. So the decision to keep a low profile is quite literally an insurance policy for personal safety, for family safety. It shields that private family life from the unpredictable glare of public scrutiny.
Wow. Okay, so that's a big one. The second pillar you mentioned is also incredibly powerful, negotiation leverage. This seems a bit more subtle, but I can see how it could save immense amounts of money over a lifetime.
Oh, for sure. Think about it. If you approach a high-value purchase, say a custom home renovation or a specialized medical service or even just hiring a contractor, and you look visibly wealthy, well, the vendor almost automatically applies what the source is called the wealth premium. Their internal quote just starts higher, maybe 50%, 20% higher, because they assume your budget is basically limitless and that you won't bother comparison shopping based on actual need. They anchor the price way up right from the start.
And the reverse is true, right? Which is the heart of the strategy. If you show up in, I don't know, an unassuming car wearing practical clothes and you speak with confidence about the market rate, you're automatically positioned as a careful comparison shopping client. You avoid that immediate inflation of expectations. So understatement becomes this like calculated pricing strategy used repeatedly across all transactions, and those savings compound over time.
Exactly. It's smart.
Now, let's pause here and maybe raise a knowledge gap question that flows directly from this point. Because we can't ignore the counter argument, can we? Is there ever a situation where projecting some level of success is actually necessary for negotiation or credibility? Like I'm thinking high stakes venture capital, maybe certain high-end legal fields. Appearing successful often establishes that necessary gravitas or peer level status you need to close a deal. How do people practicing stealth wealth navigate that need for credibility without triggering the wealth premium?
That's a great question. It really gets into the social finesse element of the strategy. What the sources suggest is that true wealth projection, when it's absolutely needed, comes through competence and reputation, not through visible consumption. So if you need to establish gravitas, you use your network, you use your knowledge base, your track record, not a loud watch or a flashy car. You want your credentials to do the flexing, not your accessories.
Okay, that makes sense. Competence over consumption.
Precisely. Moving to the third pillar, lower social friction. This is all about minimizing the constant kind of corrosive effects of money on relationships. When you project high income or immense wealth, you introduce immediate friction. Things like envy, awkward social power dynamics, and, the inevitable ask culture. People start asking you for money.
Oh yeah, money talk and visible wealth create what the sources accurately called weirdness. It makes things awkward, doesn't it? Suddenly, casual relationships get strained by expectations. Friends might start treating you differently. Or maybe extended family members assume you're the solution to all their financial problems. That sounds exhausting to manage psychologically.
It is exhausting.
Yeah.
So by maintaining a low profile, you dampen that envy and you
Yeah.
reduce the likelihood of those awkward, constant solicitations. You basically control what is knowable about you, which in turn manages the projections other people place upon you. It lets you maintain cleaner, more genuine relationships based on shared values, not, shared capital.
Okay, fourth pillar. This one focuses on productivity, focus, and bandwidth. This might seem a bit abstract at first, but I get it. Chasing status is incredibly expensive in two resources. Cash, obviously, but also attention, cognitive attention.
Exactly. Think about the massive time commitment required just to maintain a performative lifestyle. Researching the next luxury car, managing its upkeep, coordinating expensive renovations, worrying about how your social media feed looks. Every single status-driven decision consumes cognitive bandwidth. And that's bandwidth that could be used for much higher leverage activities, like compounding investments, developing new skills, or achieving real-time leverage in your business.
So, like Warren Buffett's choice of a simple car and home, or Mark Zuckerberg's famous uniform.
Precisely. It's an intentional elimination of decision fatigue and status chasing. By getting rid of the need for constant upgrades, they free up mental space for high-value decisions. The return on investment for saving bandwidth is just astronomical at the highest levels of business.
Got it. And finally, the fifth pillar, which sounds crucial for the truly affluent, institutional scrutiny. High visibility basically operates like a magnet for unwanted institutional attention.
That's a good way to put it. When you are visibly successful, you become a bigger target. For the media, who might start digging into your private history or transactions, and, critically, for lawsuits and regulatory bodies. The sources really highlight that low-key living is an explicit asset protection mindset. It reduces the surface area of risk an individual exposes to potential opportunists.
That makes sense. Less to shoot at.
Exactly. And furthermore, flashing extreme wealth can sometimes invite unwarranted attention from tax authorities. Auditors are often drawn to high-profile cases because, well, The probability of finding a high-value error or maybe a questionable structure is higher, or simply because the case might generate media interest. By just being unremarkable, you reduce the likelihood of drawing that deep regulatory or legal dive.
So, okay, wrapping this part up. We can pretty much conclude that stealth wealth is less about passive modesty and really entirely about active risk management and strategic self-interest. It's a calculated methodology to maximize freedom and minimize friction. Seems pretty compelling.
Okay, so now that we've established the why, let's examine the proof of concept. Let's look at some of the world's most successful figures. Because the source material really does challenge that stereotype that immense wealth automatically requires a lavish, highly visible lifestyle. In reality, the richest often deploy intense behavioral defense strategies.
Yeah, let's get into the examples.
The first, probably the most iconic example, is Warren Buffett. His understatement isn't just a quirk, it's a deep commitment. The man is worth hundreds of billions, yet he famously still resides in the same modest house in Omaha, Nebraska that he purchased way back in 1958 for, what, $31,500. It's an extreme example of lifestyle permanence.
Right. And let's not forget the technology detail, which really underscores his commitment to function over performance. Up until just 2020, he resisted the modern smartphone completely, using a decades-old, like $20 Nokia flip phone. That's amazing.
It is. And the rationale wasn't nostalgia, it was purely efficiency and security. A flip phone offers basically zero distracting features and presents a much, much smaller digital security risk surface area than a modern smartphone. That is the core insight, really.
Right.
His frugality isn't about saving $31,000 on a house. It's about signaling absolute focus and resisting that endless consumer cycle. And this behavior also trickles down, right? It influences the entire corporate culture of Berkshire Hathaway, which famously avoids things like corporate jets and extravagant overhead. He translates his personal stealth wealth into institutional cost savings.
Fascinating. Okay, then we have Mark Zuckerberg. He deploys a different but equally intentional form of camouflage. He's known for his uniform, right? The same gray t-shirt or black hoodie worn daily for years and years.
Yeah, and this choice is directly related to that focus and bandwidth pillar we just discussed. He apparently told an audience once that he wants to clear his life, so he has to make as few decisions as possible about anything except, how to best serve the community, as he put it. Choosing an outfit is just eliminated from the daily cognitive load. And the uniform also serves as a form of social camouflage, allowing him to maintain a standardized, non-distracting public image, avoiding the drama or criticism that often follows high-fashion choices.
Yeah, it keeps things simple. Okay. And the late Ingvar Kamprad, the founder of IKEA, gives us another perfect example of operational stealth. We learned he flew economy class, insisted on taking buses sometimes, and drove a 20-year-old Volvo for much of his later life.
Right. For a man whose wealth was generated by democratizing furniture for the masses, his low-key consumption was utterly congruent with his brand ethos. Smart. But fundamentally for him and these other billionaires, the goal is freedom. If you look like everyone else, well, you can move like everyone else, unnoticed.
Which leads us directly to our first analogy for the learner, the strategy of camouflage. Stealth wealth works because it prevents profiling and prevents the inflation of expectations. It's like financial camouflage.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. We see this most clearly in the fashion distinction. The strategy actively avoids the overt status symbols, the loud luxury logos of Gucci or Balenciaga.
Right.
Instead, the focus shifts entirely to those quiet luxury brands like Loro Piana. They're known for ultra-high quality, durability, and, high cost. But their status is only recognized by an extremely small, highly sophisticated circle of insiders.
Okay, so the distinction is critical then. Loud luxury signals, look at my status, look how rich I am, to the entire crowd. Stealth wealth signals, I value comfort, durability, and personal quality, and I am accountable only to myself.
It shifts the validation from external to internal, right?
Exactly, that's the core shift. But this brings us back to our earlier point and demands we explore the knowledge gap of status by anti-status. If the only people who recognize your, say, $5,000 cashmere sweater are other ultra-high net worth individuals, has the strategy merely replaced loud flexing with a more subtle, high-level form of signaling? Like, when does hiding your wealth become a new, more refined form of status competition? That's a tricky line, isn't it?
It is a tricky line, and that boundary relies entirely on internal motivation. If you buy the high-quality item because it genuinely lasts 20 years and provides superior comfort, Well, that's strategy. That's function. If you buy it specifically because you know only the right people will recognize the tagless quality, then yeah, that's arguably a new type of flexing. The sources suggest genuine stealth wealth practitioners prioritize function and longevity first. Any status recognition is just an incidental side effect they try to ignore, or at least downplay.
Okay, that makes sense. Intent matters.
Definitely. Now let's look now at the chilling examples of the high cost of high visibility, because the risks here are not abstract at all. They're concrete and often catastrophic when privacy is lost.
Right, it's scary stuff.
Consider the robbery of Kim Kardashian in Paris in 2016. This was a crime directly enabled by conspicuous consumption on social media. She had repeatedly posted photos of high-value jewelry, including a very large diamond ring, and shared her location and travel habits online. She essentially provided a blueprint for the perpetrators, who knew exactly what she had and where she was staying.
Yeah, that was a huge story. And the truly tragic case of the rapper Pop Smoke in 2020 that illustrates the fatal consequences of digital indiscretion combined with visible gifting. He was shot and killed during a home invasion after accidentally revealing his temporary Los Angeles address on Instagram. How did that happen again?
He had posted a picture of a gifted bag, like a designer bag he received, and the address label was visible on the box in the photo. This small detail was spotted online, apparently used by the criminals. It just highlights that for the wealthy, or anyone with visibility, digital discretion is absolutely fundamental to physical survival.
Terrifying, just a simple mistake.
And beyond physical safety and crime, there was that layer of government and tax scrutiny we touched on earlier. High visibility can attract unwanted attention from the IRS or similar bodies globally. Tax auditors often apply resources based on the perceived yield of an investigation. So if an individual is constantly flashing wealth-expensive toys, yachts, multiple exotic cars, it creates a stronger initial case for an auditor to justify a deeper dive into complex financial structures. Low visibility provides an element of compliance peace of mind, you could say.
Right, stay off the radar. And finally, there is the deep psychological cost of visibility captured by this golden cage concept. We tend to glamorize fame and wealth, but once that anonymity is lost, it is almost impossible to get back, isn't it?
Almost impossible. The sources recount that anecdote about Michael Jackson back in 2003, renting an entire Florida supermarket and staffing it with his own employees, telling them to act like normal shoppers, just so he could experience the simple, mundane act of grocery shopping.
Wow, that just vividly illustrates the profound loss of normalcy that comes with extreme visibility. It's quite sad, actually.
It is. The ability to just blend in is a form of priceless freedom. High-profile individuals like Lady Gaga, Daniel Radcliffe, Zayn Malik, they've all spoken publicly about the psychological toll and regret over losing simple anonymity. Stealth wealth ensures the wealthy individual can maybe own the golden cage, but they can choose when to exit it and move through the world unbothered. It lets them buy back their time in peace.
Okay, so we've definitely established the strategic necessity of financial invisibility. Now let's get really specific. How is this high-level strategy actually executed day to day? We're going to walk through the practical playbook for stealth wealth. What do people actually do? First up is lifestyle optics. This is about making conscious, durable choices that actively resist that status pressure. So this means driving reliable, fundamentally unremarkable cars, think maybe high-end Lexus or Toyota model, something dependable but not flashy, and keeping them for, say, 8 to 12 years or even more. You choose timeless, functional design over loud, attention-seeking aesthetics.
Right. And it also means adopting a maintain and repair mindset. Instead of impulsively upgrading a wardrobe or an appliance just because it's a new season or there's a new model, you prioritize repair, maintenance, and longevity. The goal is to maximize the utility and lifespan of every high-quality item you purchase, really resisting that Diderot pressure to constantly replace things just to match the latest trend.
And location matters profoundly, doesn't it? You live in a neighborhood that is convenient, secure, and, nice enough to meet your functional needs, maybe good schools, access to nature, but you actively avoid the obvious trophy zones. Because trophy homes are high maintenance, high tax, and they immediately signal your financial status to every jurisdiction, every delivery person, and every potential opportunistic litigant out there.
Absolutely critical. Next, let's look at the financial choices. The playbook here heavily favors boring, diversified assets over assets designed primarily for performative consumption. Think things like yachts, sports cars, or private plane fractional shares. Those things tend to have high depreciation and really high maintenance costs. They bleed cash.
So what's the alternative?
The core mechanism here is automation. You automate saving and investing directly into low-fee diversified index funds the moment your paycheck hits. make it automatic, you maintain ample cash buffers for emergencies, and you ensure robust risk management, particularly getting good umbrella liability insurance.
Umbrella liability. Explain that quickly.
Sure, it provides an extra layer of protection, often starting at $1 million,
Right.
but can go up to $5 million or more against lawsuits that could target your accumulated net worth if something bad happens, like a car accident where you're found liable. It's crucial protection.
Got it. Defensive financial planning. And crucially, you adopt an aggressive policy of digital silence regarding any investment wins, portfolio sizes, or market moves, right?
Yes, compound silently. Recognize that broadcasting success just invites scrutiny and those asks we talked about.
Okay, now this leads us to probably the most complex area, legal hygiene for the truly wealthy. We need to simplify this carefully while stressing absolute adherence to the law and the need for professional guidance. The goal here seems to be the strategic separation of personal identity from assets.
That's the essence of it. When we talk about things like LLCs, limited liability companies, or trusts, we are talking about creating legally distinct entities. An LLC essentially acts as a legal wall, separating your personal liability from business assets or maybe holding real estate investments. A trust is a highly customized structure, often used for sophisticated estate planning, asset protection, and sometimes tax efficiency. It allows assets to be controlled for a beneficiary without being directly owned by the individual grantor.
Okay, so to simplify massively, the strategy is about making your wealth indirect. Like you might own the LLC and the LLC owns the building, but you don't directly own the building on paper. This reduces the risk surface area in case of, say, a personal lawsuit. But you need to stress, though, that these tools are complex, jurisdiction-specific, and require constant professional oversight to ensure compliance.
Absolutely. Could not stress that enough. We must emphasize that the use of these advanced tools demands the guidance of top legal and accounting professionals. Strict compliance with all local and international tax laws is non-negotiable. Furthermore, for the ultra-wealthy, liquidity management is key. The strategy often involves managing cash flow by borrowing against diversified collateral, like a large, stable stock or bond portfolio, instead of constantly selling appreciated assets.
Why do that? Why borrow instead of sell?
Because selling assets triggers capital gains taxes immediately. Borrowing against them, using them as collateral for a loan, provides cash flow while allowing the underlying assets to continue compounding tax deferred under current law anyway. It's a mechanism to maintain that long-term compounding while accessing liquidity when needed. But, and this is a big but, it carries significant risks related to interest rates changing or market volatility crashing the value of your collateral. So it must be done very conservatively and with expert advice.
Right, not something to dabble in lightly. Okay, finally, let's just quickly revisit digital discretion, which seems applicable to everyone, regardless of net worth. This sounds like a non-negotiable in the playbook. Minimal wealth talk online, period.
Absolutely. That means no public posts about big bonuses, large purchases, or even detailed travel plans, especially in real time.
You have to avoid geotagging high-value items or habitual locations like your office or your home. Assume every public post is permanent, cross-referencable, and could potentially be used by an adversary, whether a thief or a litigant.
And enabling two-factor authentication, 2FA, on every critical account, financial, email, social media, everything, is just a fundamental layer of defense against increasingly sophisticated breaches. Do it now if you haven't.
Good advice. Okay, now that we have the playbook, let's dissect the psychological roadblocks, the mental traps that this strategy is specifically designed to overcome. Because these two traps sound like where most people, maybe unintentionally, fail in building lasting wealth.
They really are major pitfalls. The first big trap is the Diderot Effect. Have you heard of this?
Vaguely. Remind me, to explain it simply. Is it that thing where one fancy, beautiful item enters your life and it immediately creates dissonance, like clashing with all your other possessions, making you feel compelled to upgrade everything else to match the standard of that one new item?
That's exactly it. It's a powerful, insidious form of consumer pressure. The original anecdote involves the French philosopher Denis Diderot. He received a luxurious new red robe as a gift. Suddenly, his beloved but simple study felt shabby in comparison. The robe essentially demanded an environment worthy of its magnificence. So he felt trapped into replacing his desk, then his chair, then his rug, spending himself into unnecessary debt simply to achieve aesthetic harmony around this one new object.
Ah, I see it now. And we see this everywhere today, don't we? You buy a fancy 4K television, and suddenly your old audio system feels completely inadequate. Or you buy a new high-end gaming console, and now you need the custom desk, the ergonomic chair, and the expensive headset to match the whole setup. It's like a cascading consumer compulsion. One thing leads to another.
Exactly. It never ends. So the counter strategy, and this is crucial for you listening, is to pre-commit to upgrade boundaries. You have to proactively decide what is sacred in your environment, what will not change just because something new arrives. So if you buy a new piece of art, you consciously commit that your perfectly good sofa stays. If you buy a beautiful new suit, you commit to keeping your existing reliable car for 5 more years. You intentionally interrupt that chain reaction before it starts.
Setting boundaries. Okay. What's the second major trap?
The second major trap is lifestyle creep and the hedonic treadmill. This is our second core analogy for today. It's when your income or your success or your status rises, and your expenses rapidly adjust upward to meet it. The things that once felt like a luxury quickly become the new baseline, the new normal. This forces you to consume even more just to maintain the same level of perceived happiness or satisfaction.
Right. So you get a significant pay raise. You celebrate by maybe upgrading your morning coffee from $3 to $7, taking frequent $20 lunch delivery orders, maybe upgrading your phone plan to the most expensive tier. At first, this spending feels deserved, exciting even. But within, 6 months, your brain just adjusts.
Completely adjusts. That $7 coffee is now just normal coffee, the $20 lunch feels like a necessity, and suddenly a $10 meal feels cheap and unsatisfying. You are running harder on the treadmill, spending more, just to stay at the same level of emotional satisfaction. That feeling never lasts. That's the treadmill.
Ugh. So what's the strategic counter to that?
The strategic counter is pretty radical, but effective.
Oh.
You tie lifestyle raises to net worth milestones, not income jumps.
Okay, explain that difference.
An income jump just means more potential to save. It hasn't happened yet. A net worth milestone, say hitting $100,000 or $500,000 in your investment portfolio, is actual evidence of sustained discipline and successful compounding. Only then, when you hit a predefined net worth goal, do you allow yourself a small, intentional lifestyle upgrade. This ensures your high saving rate is protected and remains your absolute priority.
Ah, I see. That shifts the focus of your financial identity entirely from how much you earn, your income velocity, to how much you keep and compound your actual asset value. That's powerful.
It reframes everything.
Okay, let's try to synthesize this into really actionable steps for the learner. We need to be super clear about what to copy from this playbook and, just as importantly, what to avoid. So copy this. The boring by default budget. Design a budget that absolutely funds your intentional sources of joy, the things that truly matter to you, that enrich your life, but is otherwise predictable, lean, and automated towards building assets. Prioritize buying fewer, higher quality, durable goods to extend those replacement cycles and defeat the Diderot effect we just talked about.
Yes. And crucially, embrace the power of automation. Set up automatic transfers to your investment funds that happen on payday. Make saving the default action, not the afterthought you get to if there's money left over. Then, build that defensive stack. Maintain a sufficient emergency fund. Make sure you carry adequate insurance, especially that umbrella liability insurance if you have growing assets to protect.
Okay, clear on what to copy. Now, skip this. The authenticity check. The source is universally warned against performing fake poverty, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's inauthentic, it's unnecessary, and it really undermines trust in your relationships. People see through it.
You must also skip any illegal tax evasion or overtly sketchy schemes. Strategies about optimizing within the rules, not breaking them, seems obvious, but needs saying.
Definitely. And this isn't about ascetic misery either. You must budget for those sources of joy we mentioned. The goal is control, not self-punishment.
And probably the biggest thing to skip, the thing that destroys more wealth than almost anything else. Debt-fueled status buys. If it doesn't compound value or generate cash flow, think twice, maybe 3 times, before taking on high-interest debt just for consumption.
Sound advice. And remember, the stealth wealth mindset also delivers that default psychological leverage in negotiation we discussed. Let's just expand on that slightly. If you appear unassuming, your lack of visible wealth signals caution and financial prudence to the other party. You can then use this psychology when you're negotiating, say, with a car dealer or a home renovator.
How would that sound in practice?
You could confidently use phrases that reinforce your prudence. Something like, look, I'm looking for the most reliable option here, not the flashiest. I've seen comparable quotes that are about 10–15% lower for this exact scope of work. Can you help me understand your premium, or can we perhaps come closer to that market rate? Your low-key appearance helps sell the vendor on the idea that you are a careful financial analyst, not just a target to be fleeced. You leverage that invisibility into tangible, measurable financial savings, again and again. Okay, shifting gears now as we head towards the end. Let's look at the long-term implications and how you, the listener, can fully apply this mindset, even if you're only just beginning to build your initial savings. Because the power of being underestimated, it's a lifelong asset. When you maintain a low profile, generally nobody bothers you. You tend to avoid scammers, you might avoid that family member who always seems to need a loan, and you definitely avoid paying the wealth premium on purchases. This applies whether you have $50,000 in savings or $50 million. The strategy begins working immediately by protecting your psychological and financial resources.
Yeah, that's a great point. It radically reframes the choice most consumers face every single day. You are constantly choosing between buying validation, which is conspicuous consumption, and buying freedom, which is stealth wealth. The first one forces you onto that hedonic treadmill, requiring constant effort and spending just to feel satisfied. The second allows you to decouple your happiness from acquisition, achieving peace and control over your own trajectory. It's a fundamental choice.
It really is. And the mindset also extends to your policy on things like charity and giving. The sources emphasize treating generosity as private policy, not public content. You give because you are intentional about supporting a cause you believe in, not because you seek crowdsourced validation or social credit for announcing your donations online. This reinforces that internal focus over external performance, which is key to the whole philosophy.
Makes sense. Keep it personal. Now, for the listener who is ready to start today, the sources provided a highly structured initial 30-day starter plan. This breaks down the psychological shift into immediate, manageable, actionable steps. Let's go through this plan quickly, not as a list of chores, but maybe as a path to immediate psychological relief and control.
Okay, sounds good.
Week 1, focus on the baseline and defense. The hardest part is often just stopping the momentum, right? So you freeze your current lifestyle expenditures immediately, no new non-essential purchases for the week. Then you set a non-negotiable saving floor, maybe 15%, 20% of your income, and a maximum lifestyle ceiling, what you won't go above. Finally, you initiate or top up your emergency fund plan. Even just starting it is huge. The psychological benefit of week 1 is simply establishing control and building that immediate financial foundation.
Right. Week 2, automation and boundaries. This week is all about putting systems in place. You immediately automate transfers directly to your investment accounts, treating savings like any other fixed expense, like rent or utility bill. You then cancel, say, 2 non-essential subscriptions you haven't used in the last 90 days. Think streaming services you forgot about or newsletters you don't read. Be honest with yourself. And crucially, you actually draft that minimal upgrade boundary list we talked about, deciding right now what you will not change just for status reasons. Halt the Diderot Effect before it can even begin.
That's a good practical step. The challenge here is consistency, isn't it? But the benefit is massive decision fatigue reduction down the line.
Yeah.
Week 3, risk and digital hygiene. This is about building the deep defensive layer. You complete a detailed insurance check, health, disability, and at least price out umbrella liability coverage if you have some growing assets. Just get the quote. You enable 2-factor authentication 2FA on all your important financial, email, and social media accounts. Seriously, this is the single highest leveraged security step you can take online. Then you actively scrub your public profiles. Remove old geotags from photos, minimize any past financial bragging or overly revealing posts. Clean it up.
Yeah, this step feels a bit clinical, maybe tedious, but it drastically reduces your exposed risk surface area, both digitally and physically. It's worth the hour it takes.
Okay, final week. Week 4, optimization and review. You use your new negotiation mindset to renegotiate one recurring bill, maybe your insurance premium, your phone plan, or your internet service. Use that quiet leverage we talked about. Just try.
You also prioritize necessary maintenance over impulse upgrades. For example, maybe service the HVAC system instead of buying a fancy new smart thermostat you don't really need. Function over flash. And finally, you schedule your first quarterly net worth review. Actually put it in your calendar. Track your progress and internalize the knowledge that compounding, not spending, is your main priority now.
Wow, that 4-week plan is a pretty complete roadmap towards starting that journey to financial freedom and invisibility. Very practical.
It really gets you started on the right foot. Now let's use the exhaustive synthesis we've built here to maybe explore some of the remaining knowledge gaps and encourage some critical thinking because, let's be honest, the strategy isn't perfect or without challenges.
Right. We must return to the social dimension we touched on earlier. Knowledge gap 2 is really about navigating the human element. What are the inevitable trade-offs when trying to navigate social dynamics? When does consistent understatement start looking like perceived cheapness, especially to friends or colleagues? And how do we ensure clear communication prevents misunderstanding? That seems tough.
The challenge here is immense, you're right. If you constantly decline expensive group trips or always opt out of high-end dining with colleagues, you do risk being perceived as ungenerous, or maybe even a social impediment. The sources seem to imply the solution lies in consistency and selective generosity. You need to be reliably present in modest ways. Maybe occasionally host modest events yourself. Always pay your way completely and promptly. People generally adapt to consistency. If you communicate simply, maybe saying something like, hey, I'm really focusing on optimizing my budget for some long-term goals this year, and you stick to it without being preachy, the friction eventually tends to subside. It takes time, though.
Okay, consistency and clear, non-judgmental communication.
And for those listeners who might be operating at the highest levels of wealth, we must acknowledge a critical institutional risk. This is knowledge gap 3. For high net worth individuals using those advanced legal tools, trusts, holding companies, collateralized borrowing, how to constant rapid changes in global tax law, particularly jurisdictional rules, immediately impact the viability and risk profiles of those complex strategies.
Right. That complexity itself is the vulnerability of the entire system, isn't it? Low visibility helps shield you, maybe, but it doesn't shield you from legislative change. If a tax loophole is closed overnight, or a jurisdiction suddenly shifts its rules on trust taxation, those carefully constructed structures can instantly become liabilities.
Precisely. The strategy requires not just good initial setup, but continuous proactive defense against regulatory movement. It underscores exactly why the complex layers of the Stealth Wealth Playbook absolutely mandate the best, most cautious, most up-to-date legal and accounting guidance available. The risks of non-compliance or just falling behind the changes are immense and constantly shifting.
A crucial caveat for those playing at that level.
So to bring this entire deep dive together for you, our listener, we have thoroughly covered the strategic rationale behind stealth wealth, the psychological barriers it helps overcome, and the practical execution of achieving financial invisibility. The ultimate conclusion we draw from the sources is that stealth wealth is not really about deprivation or hiding your success in a negative way. It's about absolute intentional control. Control of who sees your resources, control of your own attention, control of your risk exposure, and ultimately, control of your financial trajectory. You consciously spend money only where your life gets demonstrably better, and you just go quiet everywhere else where attention is expensive or risky.
Well put.
And here is the final provocative thought we want to leave you with to carry forward. In a world absolutely driven by constant performance, the endless scroll, and the desire for external validation, choosing to look simple, to be financially invisible, that might just be the most sophisticated and financially powerful move you can make. The wealth you never broadcast is the wealth that keeps compounding silently, safely, behind the scenes. Let the quiet, relentless engine of mathematical compounding do all the flexing for you over time.
That's a powerful closing thought. A tremendous thank you again to the learner for providing such a comprehensive, structured, and deeply insightful stack of sources. It really allowed us to navigate this demanding intersection of financial strategy, behavioral psychology, and personal security in detail. You now hold the full playbook. You know the critical difference between strategy and aesthetics. You have detailed strategies to combat those insidious traps like the Diderot Effect and the hedonic treadmill, and you have a clear 30-day plan to begin your own journey toward financial invisibility and increased control should you choose to take it. And that was your deep dive.